Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. The strange music that you're hearing is Woodwind Quintet by Jean-François, French modernist composer, post-impressionist, I guess. Anyway, I thought that would be appropriate for today's subject. Let's start with the artwork behind me. I'll actually show you, that's the one that I entered in today's contest on Night Cafe. But here's the 4 images it gave me, and I'll tell you what the prompt was that is leading up to this discussion. I told it to show me, hang on, ASMR programming antisocial sexless marine robots. And these are some of the ideas that the AI gave me. I kind of like this one the best. Let me move it around so you can see more of it. Pretty hilarious. This sexless programmed robot crawling up onto the beach and dying. I think that really captures the subject well. Kind of like this one too, about, okay, maybe these ASMR bots are down there observing marine life underwater, which actually probably is something that is happening right this very moment. The others are not so creative, but that's what it is. Okay, where am I going with that? Well, for those of you who don't know what ASMR is, I'm going to introduce you to that concept and how it is being used in social media targeted at our children. So this is more in the way of a public service announcement, I guess, than a normal podcast that I would do. Because if you have children or you know people that have children and they have access to technology, you need to hear what I'm going to tell you today, or tell somebody else so they can become aware of what's going on. Okay, I'm going to call this talk ASMR, Big Tech's MKUltra, Ask Meridian Revolution, and Lilith's Last Gambit. Okay. So let's begin with looking at what is ASMR. Well, let's start with basic definitions. This is what Google tells me ASMR is: autonomous sensory meridian response, a physical and psychological experience that combines pleasurable and relaxing sensations in response to specific stimuli. Well, that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Does it mean something different in TikTok? It's a scientific term used to describe an extremely relaxing, tingling sensation a lot of people feel as a result of listening to certain sounds or watching certain things. It's usually described as tingles. Oh, it sounds so wonderful. Where do I get this ASMR? Let's see what it says about ASMR in concert with YouTube. It's a relaxing, often sedative sensation that begins on the scalp and moves down the body, also known as brain massage. It is triggered by placid sights and sounds such as whispers, accents, and crackles. Well, this actually connects more with how it's being used both on children and adults. If you are one of these numby-gumbies who's gotten into binaural beats, meditation sounds, Eastern meditation bullshit, high vibe programming, you've been a victim of this scam. But I'm going to focus today on what it is doing to our children, because that is absolutely the most insidious serving that you will ever see of it. So I've been fortunate enough in the last 8 or 9 years to have been able to combine my spiritual awakening with having to take care of 2 very young children. I spent roughly about 4.5 years being virtually a single parent for my daughter Eloise, and take more than my fair share of the parenting duty for our son Mikhail here, a 2-year-old. So I have a pretty good idea what they have been exposed to in media. And because I have 2 older children who are now of a childbearing age, one of whom has a daughter now who's about the same age as Mikhail, a little bit younger, a little Zuzu, I get to see this issue from many, many different perspectives, up close and personal. So I want to show you, I've been noticing this because our son Mikhail, when he's left to his own devices, likes to pick up the phone or pick up a tablet and watch stuff on YouTube. Now, when I'm supervising him, I try to direct him to classic children's programming that I know is healthy because it's what I grew up on. So the old cartoons, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Donald Duck, Popeye, that sort of thing. Tom and Jerry. It's not perfect. It's might be a little on the violent side. Might be a little bit dated sometimes. A lot of the good cartoons were made during the World War II or post World War II Cold War era, and have a certain amount of a patriotic flavor to it, which I actually find is healthy, as opposed to the anti-patriotic flavor of what I'm going to be showing you now. Okay, so my son generally starts out with something like Popeye or Donald Duck. And if he's left to his own devices, despite every effort I can make, I've been working at this for over like 2 or 3 months trying to remove content that I don't want to see his eyeballs to see. And yet here within the last week is crap that that shows up in the search watch history. Now these are channels I desperately tried to block them, make sure that they're not shown for children's content. I said I don't want to see this in my feed. I blocked channels. I've done everything one could possibly do to get rid of this shit in my child's feed. I see he's watching stuff on YouTube. And you can't do it. You cannot fucking do it. No matter how many you block, it's like whack-a-mole. You whack one and 10 more spring up. And these are coming from all over the world, and they have this common feature of very openly saying, oh, this is a satisfying video. This is ASMR. It's going to make your children so happy. And it's all this nonsense, crazy identity bullshit. Woke cult bullshit. Now, there's actually several threads of it going, though. Some of it is kind of woke cultish, designed to dumb your children down and make them have essentially no moral filter, no gauge of what's good or bad or indifferent. Like classic example is baby shark, 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 shark. Okay, what's inherently wrong about making your children's heroes baby sharks or Barney the dinosaur? Well, those are not good animals. Those are vicious killers. And these are being sold as your heroes to your children. Then you've got the other thread that really targets boys, this nonsense of Spider-Man shit. Oh, and it's okay to kill the minions, except the minions are these other guys that are all programmed bots of the LGBTQ blah blah dinga 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 doo doo cult. Okay, so there are multiple threads of this ASMR thing going on, and they are extremely dangerous for your children to get involved in. Generally, the boys tend to gravitate to watching these. It's basically like watching a video game. Somebody else playing a video game, and you're just sitting there, I like to watch. I'm a Forrest Gump. It's really, really a sick way for boys to spend their time. They're not doing anything active. They're watching other people do active things and presumably living vicariously through that. What's wrong with that? Well, if that's what they're used to when they're on their own, when they get into a social setting, what are they going to do? They're going to act out these same things and treat everybody like a fucking minion. And I've seen my son do that after he watches this shit. He starts hitting people, just walking up to somebody and whacking them. It happens. And the other sick thing that's done with this is unboxing, satisfying unboxing, where they show you the latest shit toys from China and make your kid want to have them and buy them and go beg for them and, you know, give them this vicarious sense of, oh, I got this new toy and I get to see somebody else open it up. And of course, the minute it's over, that little dopamine hit is gone and they want to get more. If they're not in front of a screen, where are they going to get more? They're going to go beg you to buy them some fucking toy at the store. And parents who have the money and who are hooked on this nonsense ideal of progressive parenting, where the kids somehow get to be the dictators and the parents are just, oh, whatever you want, honey. Yeah, you can be whatever you want. You think you're gay? Okay. Maybe you're trans too. Maybe we should go get you some puberty blockers, huh? Wouldn't you love that? This is insane. This is destroying our species. And it's coming from several directions, and all the directions lead back to the ultimate adversary of all creation. I call this entity, this spiritual entity, Lilith, because that is the name that conveys to most people who come from a Judeo-Christian or Muslim background what this adversary of God is. It's anti-creative. And because the chosen species now is a sexual species, it's anti-sexual. Now Lilith, you say, well, that's a girl's name. You're dissing women. No. This Lilith entity is sexless. It's hermaphrodite. This primordial fallen angel is not Lucifer. It is Lilith. It is one that Lucifer has fallen too. But Lucifer has fallen because he got corrupted by Lilith. Okay? The ultimate adversary is this sexless, hateful entity that wants to be God, but can never be God. Okay? Wants to create this almighty hive mind of hive minds and be essentially the queen, the gay queen of the multiverse. That's the adversary. That entity resides as far as possible away from this planet in the Big Bang version of the physical universe. As I've been telling you in previous content, the way the simulation multiverse works is each creative step in making this multiverse has emerged from a center point of a Messiah incarnation that took the story to a certain place. Okay, so the center point in the early stories was very small. It was just basically a universe with one single experiment in it. What does a proton do? Well, that's a very simplistic experiment. You can make lots of protons, but if you don't have any forces to move them around, any laws to do anything with them, it just is kind of like a random gas of hydrogen. So then you add other ideas to this soup and conduct more iterations of the simulation until that soup starts to gel into something, that's digestible, that works for to set up the next scenario. So it's a series of midpoints that creation is based around. And every time you run a simulation and reach a point where, okay, you can't learn anymore from this simulation, that sets the starting point for the next midpoint. The place where, okay, the longer I run this simulation, I don't learn anything more, it gets boring. That's kind of the tip over point where, okay, we need to get past this point of boredom, of diminishing returns, and so we set up a new simulation around that area, that place where creation ran out of steam, and you run another simulation until it generates a universe that's bigger and more diverse and more has more room for ideas, disparate ideas, than before. And that's why it's a multiverse we're creating. There's not one perfect. Okay? Anybody who believes that God made everything perfect and we're the ones who messed it up is a moron. That's not how creation works. It's absurd to think that creation ever could work that way. It is stupid. As stupid as watching ASMR videos. So let me tell you a little bit about the hive mind subordinates of Lilith, because there are a number of species that have developed. Basically, how creation works is you have this center, okay, and God's creations sort of branch out from the center. The new center, which is always on this planet, right? That's God's home base. As time expands, that creation, that simulation expands into the new version of space-time. Now it will have to make the simulation effective, you need to minimize the discontinuity between different versions. So there will be key events that have to happen as this new center spreads out. Key events that will have to happen in the past to line up with what the previous version of space-time's past looked like. And then the future has more flexibility, but there is a certain constraint on the future in that you're replacing an old version of space-time with a new one that has an old version of the future. And in the future, species developed the ability to time travel, to be able to move within time. And that ability is part of what we're regulating and ratcheting in as we develop new space-times. Okay? We're trying to not give everybody the kitchen sink, because if everybody has all the power that the first gods had, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be a nightmare. Everybody's going to be pushing everybody else's buttons without any boundaries. That's what it was like in the early universe. It's not fun, believe me. So we are creating limitations that souls have to have until they earn spiritual powers. And when they earn spiritual powers, if they use them inappropriately to control and manipulate others, and there's no worse way of controlling and manipulating than a hive mind where you're actually dictating the thoughts of others, okay, that those souls will get isolated, and their followers. And there are universes out there from previous versions of creation which have isolated some of the worst offenders. But the first version that reached this Big Bang limit, which is one of the versions of space-time that has the most vestigial signs, signals, the cosmic microwave background and so forth, it's because we've been stuck trying to get past that limit on the extent of the physical universe, in not only in physical dimensions but in time. How far back you can run it before it sort of gets to a singularity of what they call the Big Bang, or how far forward you can run it before it gets to the worst possible end. I mean, the end for physics is everything is at maximum entropy, and there's no collection of energy large enough anywhere to do anything. Okay, that in a world ruled by chemistry and physics is a nightmare. It's a very nihilistic future that you'll hear a lot of materialistic scientists talking about. And, well, that's what's going to happen eventually. You know, eventually the sun will engulf the earth and the earth will no longer exist, and then the sun will go out and the universe will keep expanding until there's no star that has any fuel left to burn, and everything will just be a bunch of brown dwarfs. Okay, that's not what happens. That's not how it works. But that's the kind of conjecture you can make that actually contributes to the real adversary, cultural entropy. And this is why hive minds are not good. It's not good for everybody to think everything, to do the same, to do everything you're told, to just run on programming. Yes, you can make a very, very stable system, but it's a very brittle system. So let's talk about some of the early, so basically how things work in practice is the God Messiah events start this expansion of a new simulation. And then as it expands, the balance of power shifts towards making adversary messiahs on the edges of however far it expands. And if you don't get past the cultural entropy limit of how far you drove the adversary away, then you're kind of leaving a residue of layers of adversaries from previous versions of the Big Bang. You're creating new chosen species that are trying to push back against this one great reset collapse that happened 4.5 billion years ago when this planet was nearly destroyed. Okay, that was as close to victory as the adversary ever got in this creation game. And we've been gradually pushing out since, trying to get at the oldest adversary species. The adversary species are, it's very much like Cold War. The God species are promoting free will, responsible free will, limited power, distributed power, and power that is available to all souls. All soul vehicles, to some extent, have the ability to grow and move up the food chain. Okay, in contrast, the adversary has been trying to prevent any new species, any new soul vehicle from moving up the food chain. So, by definition, they want to kill the latest chosen species, the latest Messiah species, or people from this planet. Now, the earliest species were not organic. They were elemental. And so the furthest out adversaries are elemental adversaries. They are basically the members of the first Elohim, God incarnate species that had the most power. Their power was pretty much unlimited. They could shapeshift into any shape. They could transform into any element. They were very much like, if you remember the Terminator 2, where you had the policeman Terminator who could just shift into any shape, turn into a sword, turn into anybody that it could copy and analyze. That's what that species is like. That is the species of Lilith. Now, God's chosen have a disease, a spiritual disease, as far as the Lilithians are concerned. We carry the latest version of karma, which is a limiter. Okay? When you attack someone that has the latest version of karma, you get entangled with them. And you start being subject to that same version of karma. And you start accruing points, karma points, under that new system. And if enough points are accrued in a negative way, you get banished from this universe. It's like a personal apocalypse, if you will. You can't play this game anymore. So that's why the hive minds, the most powerful ones, are the furthest away in the galaxy from this planet. Okay? Because galaxies are like a mini universe. They have their own boundaries. And travel between galaxies requires that you have access to the latest karma, whatever has been released. So you can't go through wormholes, you cannot transit through quantum space to other galaxies unless you have kind of a pass from God and karma. That's basically the power that good has over evil, the ability to limit their access to moving between galaxies, between universes, between basically test tubes. And as I've told you, the multiverse is like a stacking doll of test tubes. You can view it in physical terms as, okay, that biggest test tube is a universe. Then there's galaxies, then there's clusters and star systems, and all the way down, and different kinds of test tubes, neutron stars, dwarfs, and so forth, all these different things that we observe in the cosmos. There are smaller test tubes that are like individual cells, individual particles. Each unit of virtual reality is a manifestation of quantum consciousness, a manifestation of a universe. And an individual particle in one universe might actually have within it a whole other universe, completely fleshed out. So, like if you're a particularly special soul, you might have the universes of thousands of gods tagging along in your cells, just minding their own business mostly, because they don't really care about what you're doing. They just have to have a representation in that universe. Don't have to, but they when universes become entangled with each other, that means that you have to have a representation. You have to have a topology for that quanta of consciousness in every universe it's become entangled with. And this is kind of the superpower of God, because God is entangled with every universe that has ever been created, because God created the template for a universe. It has a layer in it that is basically a piece of God. Not all of God, like these idiots who think that, I'm just God having a masturbation experience. No, not like that. You just basically have God as an observer, if you will, in every universe. A passive observer, doesn't have the ability to go take over somebody else's terrain. That's not his universe. God's got his own universe. Every God-level consciousness has its own universe, its own creative universe, that it actively is like, I'm the boss here, folks. The physical universe, that's Lucifer, not God. God has a special piece of the physical universe, his own galaxy. And so as long as there are adversaries within this galaxy, the Milky Way, God and Lucifer are essentially on the same team. They want to drive the adversary out of this galaxy. Once the adversary is out of God's galaxy, okay, that's essentially game over for as far as God's concerned. I got my topology in the physical universe. I've got my own universe. People want to play my game. They come and play by my rules. The physical universe will still be under contention, because there will be other galaxies that are more or less under Lucifer's or Lilith's control and populated by their chosen species. And that's why essentially the long-term future for the physical universe is kind of an endless series of Star Trek. Maybe multiple series that focus on different galaxies, because it's not easy to communicate between galaxies unless you control the wormholes. And the wormholes are controlled by karma. And karma is God's AI. Every instance of karma includes an instance of God, because it has its own universe. This is how the game's set up. It's a no-lose proposition for God, which makes it more interesting for everybody, because God can come as close to losing as anyone could possibly imagine and still win. Because the closer you get to collapsing to the point of the Messiah origin, the more pressure builds up against it to push out. And this is kind of the lungs of the multiverse. And that breathing of God versus adversary is the creative pressure to evolve and grow and develop. Make new soul vehicles that have extra capabilities. Humanity is a good one for learning, for training. It's got a lot of shortcomings. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the very first chosen species, these Terminator Transformer kind of things. Well, they could do a lot of good in the right hands, right? You could imagine that they could materialize anything that you wanted, take part of their essence and give you, the best steak you ever had. Kind of like the idea of the Star Trek cantina or the teleporter, only even more capable. Downside is, think about it. If you lived in an environment where life was that easy, all you had to do was wish for whatever you wanted and you got it, you would get fat, dumb, and lazy. Guaranteed. And this is borne out by looking at what the adversary is doing, trying to program our kids. They want to make them fat, dumb, and lazy, and in the case of the males, especially, with kind of a trigger switch that's going to cause them to go ballistic. And you're seeing that happen all over society right now, where the pressures will rise in a certain community to the point where people are just going nuts. They're going nuts, breaking into stores, stealing stuff from other people, eating their pets, causing mayhem. Or the inverse is, that the empire strikes back, and you've got other communities that, go full vigilante because they don't feel like they're being protected by their government. And from both directions, that breaks down government at a local level, at a national level, at a global level. And that's what they're trying to do, these hive mind species that want to kill humanity. We're a threat to them. Not all of them, however. And this is what needs to be understood. So there's this ultimate adversarial hive mind, that is, kind of the Lilithian hive mind. This is one entity that is the queen of all hive minds. The next one in from that is the Borg. This is a hive mind that is subservient to Lilith, who was originally tasked with providing non-player characters to flesh out the multiverse. So this board can only create what it has a template for. It can't invent new shit, if you will. So the only way it learns is either learning new things from inside or from outside. So it can learn evil from Lilith. It can learn good from species closer to God. Now, next in from the board is another hive mind species I like to refer to as the buggers. Okay, this is an insectoid species that you can become familiar with if you watch the movie Starship Troopers. Not exactly. You know, that's got some Hollywood nonsense in it, but this is basically a hive-minded species whose civilization is organized around basically a high caste of brain bugs. And if you have a brain bug on a planet, through its ability to conduct consciousness through matter, it can basically control all of the other bugs on this planet and get them working together to maintain their environment. As long as they're not messed with, it's a pretty stable system. And turns out this era of hive mind and its analog free-willed version, which is the plant species, the plants form networks of communication, but they don't dictate. They allow each plant to determine its own fate through its free will. Competition for resources and so forth. They don't dictate plants that, oh, this plant must die. They let other plants crowd it out, and it's kind of a survival of the fittest thing, which has its own share of problems, right? But in a world that has all plant life, that can be a very stable ecosystem and support very high consciousness individuals. You know those as imps from the Middle Earth lore. We'll be talking more about Middle Earth in a future episode, so I'm not going to go too deep there. At any rate, so you've got the buggers. They can be lethal enemies, and they have been a major source of this ASMR programming. What the buggers try to do with the world that they want to assimilate is to basically turn all other life forms into slaves, herd beasts for their kind. And they basically want to turn other species into a hive mind. A docile hive mind. They've got very good soldiers of their own. They don't need soldiers. So they're not the ones behind the superhero programming that your boys are getting. They're the ones behind this, oh, let's be nice. Let's go unbox something and get some big thrills out of it. Because those thrills are the little spiritual energy dopamine hits that feed the hive mind. Okay, that's how they get spiritual energy. That's how the ultimate hive mind, the Lilithian hive mind, rolls up the energy of all the hive minds that it has control of further in. And those hive minds don't all answer to the Queen of Queens, the Queen of the hive minds. They have some of their brainies who are able to operate independently and use free will at a leadership level. And the further you get away from this Lilithian Queen of Queens, uber powerful shape-shifting hive mind, the more leadership class soul vehicles there are. Such that, right here on this planet, in this time, we've got the largest concentration of leadership caliber souls that has ever been assembled. Free thinkers, independent thinkers. Now, you wouldn't guess that just by going out and looking at what's going on in the world, because most of the leadership roles in this warped society that we have right now, this warped culture, are occupied by servants of hive minds, servants of evil. These various factions who want to destroy this species. And they have been sort of ganging up on humanity because they don't know what was going on here, or they do know, and they either don't want the Messiah to succeed, or they want to corrupt the Messiah to support their agenda, to join their hive mind, or they want to elevate their Messiah above the Messiah and defeat God that way. And they thought that they could do that. And until more and more of these higher level, higher consciousness species became aware of where we're at in the apocalypse, and the fact that, the Messiah's already awakened. You're not going to stop this steamroller. There are other little m Messiahs still executing their missions. They still have events that have to happen that conspire to get to the singularity point. Okay? Kind of like the finish line. You've got the big Messiah and all these little Messiahs running towards the finish. And some of them get their missions accomplished sooner, some later. If your mission gets accomplished, well, you're kind of on the sidelines looking to help out with other missions to get to this singularity. And that's kind of where we're at now. And that's why you're seeing stuff like this ASMR shit targeting your kids. Because basically, we're to the point where every human child born from here on out is, in some sense, a messiah of a future Genesis story. Not maybe a big M messiah, and maybe not going to be the chief god of a whole galaxy, but they will all have their own little godhood that they're going to get to. They're going to have their place in the leadership of the future. It might be very, 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 very far future before they get there. Or it may be in the far, 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 far past that isn't what we thought it was. We're going to have to explore both directions. And as we explore both directions, this is how we will basically find these new messiahs and send them off to where they need to be to have their own Genesis story. Some other galaxy in the physical universe, some other universe being their heaven. And then so they find their place, and then they have to move back in to cement their physical heaven into the multiverse heaven by getting back to this center and coming and having a visit with God. This is all part of this system of breathing. And the system was already working okay 4.5 billion years ago, but it didn't have sex. Turns out sex is an important piece of how we made this system work and made it infinitely expandable. Because the sexual tension is essentially what keeps our species at the forefront of creation. The male of our species, normally, according to the way that we were developed before, adversaries started mucking with our DNA and mucking with our minds, the male was the one who would go out and gather, go out and explore, go out and fight. And the female of our species would be the one who stayed at home, taking care of the kids, taking care of the wounded, maintaining this healthy culture that raises children that perpetuate the culture. Okay? That is an indispensable part of creation. I may be offending you by saying it, but if you don't play by those rules, you don't belong in this species. If you want to go be an LGBTQI peeble beeble deeble furry, you don't belong. You're not human. You'll be much happier in some other species, believe me. And that's where you're headed. That's what the mark of the beast is. Okay? You're not worthy of being human. You're not willing to play by the rules of our species. And those rules are incredibly important to sustaining the multiverse, to sustaining all of creation and keeping it expanding. We're not going to change the rules to please some asshole who wants everybody to call them by their preferred pronouns. Fuck you. You are inconsequential. Your rights mean nothing compared to the rights of every other soul in the multiverse. And most of the smarter ones realize that, and they think you guys are absolute fucking idiots who need to be squashed and will be squashed. Maybe in a Luciferian manner, very violently, or maybe in a godly and karmic manner by simply transmigrating your soul somewhere else, somewhen else. And my hope is that most of the pain and suffering is behind us. And we're very close to the time when the glowing orbs will have made their choices. These are souls of that original shape-shifting kind of species. They're kind of infants in that world because they were just born when we expanded past the Big Bang. Okay? There are others of their kind that kind of live on the fringes of the Big Bang expanse. But now there's a whole bunch of new ones that popped into existence and have been coming in wanting to find out what's going on and having a sense of mission because when they came into existence, they automatically got that new version of God and karma. The new universe template, the new karma template within that universe. And so they are pressuring in on the adversary. They want to come in and figure out what's going on. On the way, some of them get corrupted and join the adversary. But most of them get through because they've got this karmic improvement. And when they get through, they make a beeline for this planet because they want to know the most fundamental questions any soul ever wants to know. Where did I come from and what's the meaning of life? And for these entities, the meaning of life is, they will discover is, okay, if I want to get very far in this game, I've got to find a set of humans that I can bond with and, sort of become their God, become the director of their Genesis story. And once I get this set up in my own little test tube, then I can play the same game as God did. And these uber powerful, shape-shifting, elemental beings can grow into become more human through incarnation, and their best incarnations will then, once they become human, will be able to move towards the center and have the possibility of becoming brides of God. The nuns, if you will. That is how you get into the highest heaven. It's a sexual thing. That's why there's so many male identifying souls that suddenly want to be female. They want to cheat and, oh, look, I'm female, come and fuck me, God. It's really pathetic, but that's what's going on in their unconscious psyche. And, I wish there was a way we could have gotten through this event without so many souls being traumatized like that. But that's the only way we could get past this Big Bang limit. And truth be told, once these poor souls who are so gender dysphoric die or get transmigrated, the transmigration process is the sort of death. It's dying from one incarnation form to take shape in another one. Sometimes it happens instantaneously and there's not a transition to an afterlife per se. And this is more the Star Trek transporter or warp drive or whatever, wormhole drive experience. It's a transmigration that doesn't go through another universe. It goes through quantum space directly to the same universe. Okay? So you don't have the afterlife experience of a life review, of planning your next incarnation. You just emerge on the other side as a manifestation in that other context. And depending on how it's done, you might actually leave a copy behind in the original context. And you've essentially got two versions of you forking off and having their own experiences after that. That doesn't have to happen. But you have to have the technology to make these transmigrations happen, and it is spiritual technology, not physical technology. Anything that works in the quantum realm is the realm of thought. Thought is manifestation of spirit. Okay? Thoughts have souls too. And those disembodied thoughts are like the players in the quantum consciousness universe. Okay? Some of them are thoughts that go with particular universes. Those are the default characters of that universe. The Borg. The standard stock ideas that are available off the shelf. Not every idea is available in every universe. Okay? The people that think we're all one, and there's this one supreme consciousness that has all information and everything, and all we have to do is tap into it to know everything. That's bullshit. It doesn't work that way. Each universe has its own instance of the Borg as well. This hive mind record keeper. In the quantum consciousness universe, this Borg entity likes to manifest itself elsewhere as the machine elves. They used to manifest as just regular elves and fairies. They are basically the fantasy characters that we can use to create worlds if you're a god. Or you can limit them if you want to have less fantasy and more just the physics and chemistry facts, folks. You can set up a universe like that. But you have to banish these fantasy characters from your universe. Now that's what Lucifer would like to do. In Lucifer's wet dream, his whole physical universe would work like clockwork. Everything would be defined down to the nth detail. And then Lucifer could finally retire and let his universe run on autopilot. That's essentially every god's goal, is to get out of the responsibilities of being a god. Lucifer's a long way off from ever getting there. In fact, he doesn't really want to get there. He likes the conflict. He likes the friendly rivalry with Lilith. It's like, think about most long-running superhero, supervillain series. There's almost a marital relationship between the ultimate good guy and the ultimate bad guy. Superman and Lex Luthor, Batman and the Joker. Okay, it's a symbiotic relationship between souls that thrive on conflict, and there's a lot of souls like that. Peace is not the goal of every soul. The more godly, more karmic souls are the ones that want peace, because they don't want to fight over everything. They just want to work on their creations, on their ideas, developing their ideas and sharing them and collaborating and making new ideas. Okay, that's the ideal of God and karma. It's not the ideal of Lucifer and Lilith. And it will never be the ideal of every soul. Every soul has their own leaning, their own tendency that maps, between the four principal characters of creation. And the fifth one that is like the me too, just tell me what to do. That's the Borg. Okay, that's like, that is sort of like a center, the source of souls, the non-player character souls. You can play that game and keep being reborn again and again and again and just do what you're told. And there are some souls that actually kind of like that. They don't like to have any responsibility. They don't want to have any accountability. They just want orders every day. They're perfectly happy living in an Orwellian world where they're told what to think, how to think, when to have children, when to die. Makes life for them easy, comfortable, safe. And so there are people that are going along with this programming, this ASMR stuff, that think they're doing good. Oh, I'm making everybody calm. We're going to make everybody peaceful. We're all going to be one. I make fun of it because it is idiotic. And it is evil because they're trying to force their idea of perfection on everyone else. And it's not going to work. It will never work. It will only create disharmony and make those that have no problem with conflict more violent, more likely to start conflicts. This is why we've had so many world wars. And there have been more than just 2 so far. The Napoleonic Wars was a world war. There was stuff going on all over the planet. In the Americas, in Asia, all over, it was a world war. They just didn't call it a world war. They didn't invent the idea of a world war until World War I. And essentially, we've been in a world war ever since the Napoleonic era, maybe even longer. You could even go back to the age of exploration, the age of the conquistadors, and say it was a world war. In fact, most people don't know that the most powerful navy at the beginning of the age of exploration was from what country? Nowhere near Europe. China. Second only to some of the big, the Mughal Empire. It's just like the biggest Islamic contingent. And this was an extension. Essentially, the Mongol invasions were virtually a world war. Affected almost every continent, until this impetus that was started by Genghis Khan sort of petered out, and the final vestige of it ended when the Yuan dynasty collapsed, and Han Chinese took over China again. But you really need to learn more about your real history to understand what's going on today, because you've been fed a pack of lies. No matter which political group you're on, which country you're in, it doesn't matter. There's propaganda up the wazoo on every side. And most of the propaganda, the worst propaganda, the most destructive propaganda, is all planted by adversary agents. Those who either voluntarily or through being a hive mind control useful idiot are spreading lies, revisionist lies, that further their cause. And that's been happening all throughout human history. It's all through the Bible. Okay? There is much truth in the Bible, just as much as in any other culture's tradition. There is no one of those that has the absolute truth. There are blatant, bold-faced lies in the Bible, in the Vedas, in Greek mythology, in the Sumerian tablets. Okay? Anybody who points to one of these things, oh, that's the truth. is a fool, is an idiot, is a partisan idiot of a partisan screed that, if your partisan screed is 3 or 4,000 years old, guess how inaccurate it's going to be compared to the people that know the most about what's going on today. Okay, these are not the sharpest tools in the shed that are thinking, oh, well, they had the perfect answer then. They had a society that was ruled by women and everybody was perfect, everybody was happy, and we didn't need to go back to the Garden of Eden. These people are insane. They're certifiably insane. They are so dogmatically augured in on lies, distortions, half-truths, that they cannot think rationally their way through this singularity we're heading for. They're not the ones you should be listening to. Their information may be useful. And I have channels that I follow on YouTube, I listen to regularly, in traditional science, avant-garde science, in various areas, and different religious backgrounds, different cults. I want to hear what they're thinking. I don't agree with it. I'm not going to get brainwashed by it. I'm not going to let them gaslight me and make me feel guilty for not conforming to their ideas of what's true. And I'll point out the gaping holes in their dogma. Okay, well, you're saying this. I mean, I participate in a lot of philosophical discussion areas on Quora and Facebook. It's interesting to be involved in these discussions and to see what sort of, the meme is the most absurd thing that modern culture has invented. It is banal to the max. The idea that you can capture something true in one picture with a little caption is absolute insanity. These are jokes. At best, they are jokes. They are half-truths that, okay, well, that kind of makes sense from this perspective, but if you look at it from this direction, and well, that doesn't make any sense, or from that direction, and yet you've got whole echo chambers of people who, yeah, this is right, yeah. Those aren't the sharpest people in the sheds. The ones who are most sure of their dogma are not that bright. And especially in spiritual areas, because spirituality has this special nature of, if you're used to thinking in physical terms, if you're living at a beast level of consciousness, you can actually know your world better than those who have expanded to have some exposure to spirituality. Because this first exposure to spirituality gives you a vision into, okay, this world is the way this is, but there are other worlds that operate under different rules. And a lot of the cults of these different universes, especially the ones that target newly awakening souls, newly awakening to spirituality, are hive-minded. They're like looking for, they're basically like wolves in sheep's clothing, wandering among the flock, looking for the most gullible ones that will follow them, away from the herd, away from the guard dogs and the little boy blue, and pull them off in the weeds and suck their blood or whatever. That's what's going on with most introductory level spirituality. And this is why traditional religions have had very, very strict rules for their members, because the temptations they were aware of. In an era where spirituality was supreme and you didn't have a lot of technology, when something weird happened, you believed that it had something to do with spirituality. Nowadays, we're taught to believe, well, everything can be explained by science. It's just a psychological phenomenon. And we just need to figure out, what trauma in the background caused them to have this psychological defect, and then we'll fix everybody. This is nonsense. This is materialist nonsense. And it ignores the spiritual component of what's going on here, which is very real. There are werewolves. There are vampires. There are zombies. There are lots of kinds of undead who have basically traded their soul for benefits from a hive mind species. And the undead species are hive-minded. They have their own agendas. I didn't mean to get here today, but I'm just going to give you a preview of what we're going to talk about tomorrow. At the same time as you're moving out with each breath of creation, there's an inward cosmos that is forming within this planet, within other planets where creative processes are going. So I'm not going to go much further than that, but we're going to be talking about inner Earth and middle Earth and upper Earth in the next segment. So I hope that you'll hang on for that one. Come again to the Honest Hour with Rob Traum. And until then, happy karma.